We're going to watch the Trump victory speech in a bit. Just give me a second, okay? Just give me a second. Following Trump's victory, a bunch of Trump's advisors and future advisors have gone on news media to talk about how they're going to destroy the country. Let's start with the funniest one first. You guys ready to be defluorinated? God, look at that collar gap. Collar gap while standing with your back straight and the suits buttoned. Incredible. Men's tailoring is dead. Talk about Oxford collar shirts. You mean button-down collars? Oxford describes the cloth. This is a button-down collar, and it looks terrible. You're welcome.
You have been a crusader on questioning vaccines. Are there specific vaccines that you would seek to take off the market?
Oh, I'm not going to take away anybody's vaccines. I've never been anti-vaccine.
You will not take any vaccine that is currently on the market.
If vaccines are working for somebody,
I would strongly suggest, by the way, before January 20th, 2025, get your vaccines, okay? Update on COVID, measles, whatever. Like, I would suggest getting all that. I would suggest getting a lot of stuff done before January 20th, actually. Like, a lot of admin stuff, you know? Not taxes, though, because God only knows what the tax situation is going to be. You know, for all you know, January 2021, the landscape, totally different. I would hold off on that one for a little bit.
I'm going to take them away. People ought to have a choice, and that choice ought to be informed by the best information. So I'm going to make sure the scientific safety studies and efficacies are out there, and people can make individual assessments about whether that product is going to be good for them.
Would that include COVID vaccines that are currently on the market?
I want the best science for every vaccine.
It is part of the
Tesla stock is up 20%. Oh my God, it's Jover. I neglected to mention this in my previous video in the segment that I just talked about like how we got here, because I feel it's obvious, but it bears repeating. One of the reasons we lost is because the entire capital class consolidated around Donald Trump. There's no ambiguity around it. The entire like bourgeoisie, like the wall of Wall Street, all of the most powerful people in the world made their decision.
That during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, you were questioning the FDA and calling them out for approving the emergency authorization of the COVID vaccines. If you had been in charge of the FDA at that time, would you have blocked the authorization of the COVID vaccines, like you were suggesting publicly?
What I was saying at that time is the vaccines are not going to prevent transmission, which they were telling the public that they would. They were saying
vaccines do prevent transmission because if you don't get sick from the disease, you don't spread the disease. That's how it works.
You need to take this vaccine in order to protect grandma. I knew in May of 2020 that the vaccines were not going to protect against transmission because I was actually reading the monkey studies.
But you would not have
May of 2020? That was before the vaccines were even out by like over half a year. Whatever. It's whatever. It's the new world. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if people say things that are correct or not. It doesn't matter.
You would not have told the FDA to block the authorization.
I would have been honest with the American people.
And so you wouldn't have blocked it.
I would have been honest with the American people now.
So you wouldn't have blocked it.
I wouldn't have directly blocked it. I would have made sure that we had the best science, and there was no effort to do that at that time.
And if there is another pandemic that were to strike, why should the American public have confidence?
Oh, Donald Trump does say that he's going to dismantle the pandemic emergency preparedness team again. He did that back in his first term, and then it got rebuilt, and he said he's going to destroy it again. So, you know.
You would allow a vaccine to be made available through the market, even it's on
let me point this out. That they should not have confidence in the people who are managing our pandemic. We had the worst record of any country in the world. So we had 16% of the COVID deaths in the United States of America. We only had 4.2% of the globe's population. So whatever we were doing in this country was the worst of every country in the world.
So in order to do that, you say clearing out the corruption in your terms. Would that mean clearing out the top level federal service workers that are currently at the FDA and the CDC?
In some categories, I would say.
What does that look like? Yeah,
in some categories.
So yeah, so this is Project 2025. You appoint your toadies to the head of the to the cabinet, to the heads of the administrative branches, and you gut the bureaucrats who actually keep these organizations running. You gut them down to nothing, and then you run like their skeleton to in a deliberately ineffectual manner.
Workers, their entire departments, like the nutrition departments at FDA, that have to go. That are not doing their job. They're not protecting our kids. Why do we have Fruit Loops in this country that have 18 or 19 ingredients, and you go to Canada and it's got 2 or 3?
Would you eliminate any of the agencies?
I don't think that Fruit Loops have 2 or 3 ingredients in Canada. I don't know that for sure. I'm just going to guess that. He's right, do they? There's no way. Canada Fruit Loops ingredients. Is fruit with double O's or... Okay, this is Fruit Loops cereal in Canada. What? It still has plenty of ingredients. I can't believe it. RFK Jr. lied to me. What the f? Sugars, whole grain corn flour, wheat flour, whole grain oat flour, degerminated corn flour, corn bran oat. The funny thing is, unironically, that like I would actually agree with so much of what RFK Jr. says if instead of doing the bullshit conspiracy nonsense stuff, he just like says, yeah, we're going to basically not only end the subsidies on, but like shut down high fructose corn syrup production, and we're going to place limits on its injection into literally every food that we eat. That's why you're a fucking lard ass, by the way. If you're watching this and you're like, why are all the photos of my parents from the 80s? Like, they're just normal people now. But back then they were both rake thin. Why is that? It's because, like, hobgoblins inject a gallon of high fructose corn syrup into every bite of food that you eat. It's literally it. That's genuine. Like, that's literally it.
To eliminate the agencies, as long as it requires congressional approval, I wouldn't be doing that. And I can get the corruption out of the agencies. This is what I've been doing for 40 years. I've sued all those agencies. I have a PhD in corporate corruption, and that's what I do. And once they're not corrupt, once Americans are getting good science and are allowed to make their own choices, they're going to get a lot of healthy.
Hobgoblin, what's the matter? What's the matter, high fructose corn syrup boy? Afraid you'll taste something? And he's handing you like a bag of brown sugar. That's true.
You've also talked about fluoride in the U.S. water supply. You would seek to ban fluoride in the U.S. water supply?
Well, I would advise the water districts that are currently using it that there's a lot of new science out there. And in fact, there's a federal judge decision by an Obama-appointed judge on October 4th of this year in which he sent EPA back to the drawing board and said, you've never done the safety studies on this. And by the way...
And so what does that look like?
How easy will it be for Trump to push through every legislation now that he won both houses? I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. If this isn't like a bowl of Fruit Loops. Very easy. There are basically no limits on his power. He can basically do, like, in a practical sense, he can do literally anything that he wants to. He's basically a king. Like, I'm kind of not exaggerating. There are essentially no holds in his power. Functionally, the only thing that can stop him from doing anything that he wants is that he's still beholden to the capital class, which is where the real power sits. Apart from that, like, it's pretty much anything. Yeah.
Debating without going back and forth on the science.
By the way, it's just lowering IQ in our children.
What would you upon January 2025, we're 3 months away here, what would you actually do in your position inside of the White House?
What about the House? Trump won the House.
And how do you make that happen? This is your chance, is what you're suggesting to me. How would you make that happen?
Listen to what I'm saying, okay, and then I'll tell you.
Okay.
I think Florida is on the way out because of that court decision. I think the faster that it goes out, the better. I'm not going to compel anybody to take it out, but I'm going to advise the water districts about their legal liability, their legal obligation to their service zones and to their constituents, and I'm going to give them good information about that.
House is not called, to be fair. I don't think we have reason to be optimistic. What about the supermajority in the Senate? They're going to remove the filibuster if they need to.
Science, and I think that fluoride will disappear.
Yeah, I think that with regard to with regard to the FDA and RFK Jr., we're going to enter in a sort of dark age when it comes to food regulations. So I would there's not really anything that you can do about that. Like, there's nothing you can do about, like, oh yeah, due to lacking regulations, all these plants that produce the food that you eat are like filled with rat shit now. It's pretty much not anything that you can do. I mean, yeah, beans and rice, but beans and rice can like also be contaminated. You could go like all farm to table stuff if you want to spend a lot of money, but you know, just wash your food with bleach. Yeah, of course, of course. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Is it worth it to grow a garden? Nah, you'd just f it up. I would recommend like buying with fresh ingredients. I know that I rep this point pretty often. Like, I know that I talk about this to the point where people might think of it as kind of like a meme rather than it being real advice, but please learn how to cook. I promise you that, like, we are in for some very difficult times, and I promise you, like, I'm gonna do the same damn thing, okay? Like, buy a lot of rice, buy a lot of beans, buy a lot of such and such, and learn how to cook a bunch of delicious meals with them. Don't be door dashing. Don't be wasting your money on like frozen food it's like $3.89 for a 200-calorie meal or something. Don't be doing that. Cancel your gym subscriptions. They're a waste of time. Get some exercise resistance bands and work out at home, okay? We're gonna make it through this together. A lot of people are going to die, man. Yeah, that's how time works and the human mortality. Oh yeah, speaking of the billionaire class, from Jeff Bezos, the guy who forced the Washington Post to not publish an endorsement of Kamala Harris because he had a backroom deal over Blue Origin with Donald Trump. Big congratulations to our 45th and now 47th president on an extraordinary political comeback and decisive victory. No nation has bigger opportunities. Wishing Donald Trump all success in leading and uniting America we all love. Again, they don't have or believe in anything besides power. All of them. If any where are all the people who this doesn't happen as much now as it used to, who get mad at me when I do Marxism? Why? Like, it's people are like, you're being reductive. There are good billionaires. I used to get more of that. I bet they're in the Reddit. I bet they're in the Reddit. I bet there are going to be people who are like, just because the entire capital class united behind Donald Trump in support of their material interests rather than fulfilling the, like, ideologically liberal, causes that they would have, believed in as a product of their environment, like, that doesn't mean that materialism is real. I see you, motherfuckers. I'm ready for your shit-ass takes. Why would the capital class support Trump if tariffs are so bad? Because the capital class's interests aren't necessarily making more money. Their interest is having more power than you. And if the world collapses and they get to survive that because they're huddled in their, like, $200 million bunkers with automated machine gun turrets that have been trained on facial recognition on, like, the Gaza perimeter fence, that's fine by them. It has nothing to do with making more money. They already have more money than they need. It's a relative thing. What do you think a billionaire would rather have? $20 billion in a world where they're equal to their peers, or $10 billion in a world where they're the wealthiest man in the world? You all know the answer. Power is relative. If there are other people standing shoulder by shoulder with you, that negates your power. Power is power over other people. If the world gets worse for everyone except them, that's the disparity increasing.